Myron Swiston here. Today, I'm going to talk about the 2-inch stretcher, the 3-inch stretcher strip, gallery, strainers, solid supports, masonite, and the various species that these are made of, which is important for us. The 2-inch, this is the 2-inch stretcher. Okay, it's 2-inch stretcher strip, 2-inch this way. This is basswood. A species is basswood, obtained in North America, which is a legitimate source for this. They're not made of spruce or pine. Now, spruce and pine, they leak the sap from the stretcher strip, and that could go into your painting, the back of your painting surface. And these are straight. So when you get these in the store, you should make sure, you'll notice that these two, they marry up without much pushing or pulling and shoving on my part. You can see that. The 2-inch is a tongue here, and you have the groove on the other side here. So they marry up very nicely together, okay, which gives you, when you assemble this, the 2-inch, it gives you a very strong stretcher, okay, and that's the basswood assembled. And when you assemble it, you want to really try to be sure that it's square, and to get your set square or your 90-degree angle, and put it on your corners and look for daylight underneath here. And you notice there's no daylight here, and I'll just do the opposite side quickly like that. I notice there's no daylight there as well. I might want to check another side, which I do. And what I do is I make sure that the stretcher is square. And that's really important for the final product when you're stretching your canvas. So that is square, that's a 2-inch, and the species is basswood. And that's really a nice stretcher for smaller size canvases. And if I look down, the other thing, if I look down, okay, the stretcher, you can see here that it's really straight. There it is there. And you can see that it's nice and straight throughout. Okay, you can see it there. And that's a good stretcher. You should ask the species when you buy these. If they're basswood, they're going to be probably going to be fine. But be careful and examine the stretchers that you're buying for straightness, and that these things easily, try to put them together in the shop that you buy these from. Put it together and really find out. Now, beware, because sometimes what they do is they make these thinner here, they make them thinner here, and overall it doesn't have that integral strength that the 2-inch has. What I like about the 2-inch, of course, is it has an edge here, like a little edge here, and it falls away as it goes toward here, so it's thicker here, thinner here. So when you assemble these, you can use either side because it has it on both sides. And when you assemble these, of course, you're not going to get in the middle of your canvas here an edge. When you start to paint, you get an edge here because it's been either stretched incorrectly or it's been assembled incorrectly. Okay, if you stretch them correctly, you won't get that inside edge on your paintings when you paint, and I've seen this many times on people's work. My friends call me Professor Crayon because I'm interested in the substrates and how they go together, how the painting is constructed. There is a real difference between kiln-dried wood and air-dried wood. Kiln-dried means that the wood has been placed in a kiln at a certain temperature for an extended period of time, which dries the wood out, gets it sealed in terms of its straightness, like this, okay, and then you have a final piece. If you're having your home built, very fine homes use kiln-dried wood. They don't use air-dried wood, which is, air-dried wood sits out on a pile, rain, snow, temperature differences, cold, hot, wind, open to pestilence of any kind. So there is a real difference. So kiln-dried, air-dried. if it's air-dried wood, what's going to happen is that it's going to bend on you. It's going to start torquing on you. And so fine homes are built with air-dried. The cheaper versions that you'll notice, you look at some of the wood and it's all wonky because it's not kiln-dried, it's air-dried. The air-dried wood, of course, has the extra expense to it. So same thing applies here. So get the better stretcher strips and you'll know automatically by, you're looking at it, it's clean, okay, it's clean, and the knots, of course, and it's not going to go wonky on you when you're stretching your canvases. So that's a 2-inch. There's also 3-inch, and this is a 3-inch here, which I've assembled. This is a little bigger canvas. On the smaller canvases, you'll find that the 2-inch is going to be quite adequate. Now, sometimes I do use 3-inch on the smaller canvases. The one I showed you, that one was a 14 by 18. No, I'm sorry, 16 by 18 was that one. This one is a 3-inch here, and again has the edge on the back side. On this one, it's on the back side. There isn't an edge here, and there's an edge on the inside. But on the front side, on the 3-inch, it's smooth all the way across, but it's thicker here, and it's thinner here. And you can see that it is tongue and groove. And on this one, there are cross pieces. This is basswood. Okay. Remember that wood, of course, is a natural material, so it isn't always perfect. There are some variances. Wood is hygroscopic, like your lungs. Breathe in, you breathe out. Wood's doing that all the time. So on a hot summer day, of course, you notice that your clothes and you feel hot, and when you go in the mall or air-conditioned places, the moisture in your clothes is extracted, and so it's been dehumidified, so to speak, and so you feel nice and cool. So that's a 3-inch with the cross pieces throughout, which gives it a really nice strength throughout. There's also out there strainers. Strainers are not stretchers. Strainers are this. This is a strainer, okay? In other words, at the corners, they're butted together like this, okay? And how they're kept together is that they have to be usually nailed, and then as well, there's glue on the inside here, okay? So they're not doing this. They're absorbing moisture, but they're not doing this, okay? They're being rigid because you've got this cross piece here. So the stress on the strainer, okay, is on this outside edge here. Now, people like the strainer because it has this gallery profile, so you don't have to, perhaps, maybe you won't have to frame them. But you do need these cross pieces in here. The cradling, you need the cradling. Now, when you stretch these, of course, you've got to be careful on your stretching because there's no give and take when you stretch it. It's absorbing moisture, but these corners are not going in and out. They're solid against each other by the nails and by the glue here. So stretching is very critical. The advantage, of course, they're fairly light, and so when you make a big canvas, big painting, you've got the gallery and you've got a big painting on a wall that's not very heavy at all. But the disadvantage, of course, as I said, there's no give and take here. It's solid on the corners. Okay? Now, the other thing that is available out there is plywood, of course, and on a small scale, 3/4 inch plywood for small paintings is probably adequate if you can't get your hands on something else and you have 3/4. But do gesso both sides, because what you're going to do is you're going to even out the surface tension throughout by painting it here and here. And you can then choose either side, of course, that you want to paint on, which is legitimate. But in a large scale, this is very heavy on a gypsum wall. It'll probably, if it's not mounted actually into the wall, it'll probably fall down off that wall. As well, out there, the old masters used solid oak or maple, and as well birch panels. Okay, they would have been solid, but now we have them with a 1/8. This one is a solid support, 1/8 inch veneer birch, and it's cradled. This is your cradling here, of course, and this is really legitimate. It's smooth. Again, do your gessoing and 2, maybe 3 coats, depending upon the kind of day or the surface that you like. But this is smooth. So if you're doing something that requires some pencil work, or you prefer a smooth surface, solid supports are legitimate, and they're light, and you can go out painting alla prima, plein air, outside, and you can paint quite some quick paintings and just set them down, and you have this side piece to hang on to. Okay, there as well with the gallery stretchers. There are gallery stretchers. So that means that they are tongue and groove on the corner here. On this corner, they're tongue and groove in here. They're going together like this. This has the gallery profile here. Okay, and you can see on the back of this one, I've got a cross piece that gives. This is a 24 by 36, so I have this cross piece, and so this plane here is not going like this or going like this, right? It's very steady throughout this length. And of course it is gallery, and it is fairly light. This is not a strainer, it's gallery. So I do use gallery as well. On the solid supports now, on the larger solid supports, they are 1/8 inch veneer birch. It could be another species on there, but notice this is a 24 by 40. There's some big cradling involved here. To keep this, with this material, we're dealing with a laminate, so in order to get to 1/8 veneer, you have one layer, another layer, another layer, another layer, and so on. They're glued together. But because it's only 1/8, you got a problem of dimensional torquing like this. It wants to do this all the time on you, and you have a natural material. So you got to put these cradling or cross pieces throughout in order to get it dimensionally stable. But it is fairly light at this size, so there's a real advantage to that. Now as well, I have the gallery, what I call a gallery. On this one here is gallery. This is a 2 1/4, 1 1/4. So 2 1/4 this way, okay, and 1 1/4 on this side here. And so you can see keys. Now some people don't really understand the keys. Really, if your canvas is stretched properly, you really won't need these keys. These keys give the conservator, the gallery, if they notice that the canvas is wonky, you can push these in the corners, tap them into the corners, tap them into the corners. And here, to give some tightening up on the canvas, so there is some control depending on where the stretched canvas ends up. Now this one, of course, is planed on this edge, so it's thicker here and it descends down here, which is thinner. So this is my outer edge, this is my inner edge, okay, on this one. And you notice it is tongue and groove, so you have this going on. Good marriage, really strong, okay. Again, nice solid cross piece with a corner here, okay. That's a nice gallery, stretcher. Because it's dimensionally stable throughout, when you use this as your painting surface and you turn it around and you show somebody the construction, they really say, wow, you've taken some time to do this. And all these stretchers and strainers, if you have good means, you'll know that these stretchers will not torque on the wall. Torquing is really provided by two things. It's the wood being perhaps the wrong species. The second part is the stretching of the canvas. It hasn't been stretched throughout. I'll show you that on, this is again a 16 by 18, okay. I put, at this point, there's 2 coats of gesso. There's 1, 2. This is 2 weeks now. I do these I do a dozen at a time. You can hear that. Nice timping. On the back, you can see that it's nicely closed off, right? And so the wood comes in the middle here, all nicely stapled throughout, 1.5 inches apart. So when this goes on a wall, it's not going to torque. Okay, it won't get wonky. It won't start doing this on you. And you use proper means, and your paint's not going to come off. Okay. Now, as well, out there, you've heard the word masonite. Now, masonite to me is danger. This is masonite. Okay, masonite comes. The Masonite company no longer makes this, so there are many other wood manufacturing companies that make this. They call it hardboard, but it's still known as masonite in a lot of places. On the one side, okay, it's rough, has a mechanical texture there, and on the other side, it's very smooth. Okay, now people do use this as a painting support because it is inexpensive. The problem with this, all the refuse, the wood chips that are left over from debarking logs and pulp and paper industry, the cellulose, some pulp that they don't want, end up in these hardboard pieces. And they use heat to press this all together. There's glue, there's resins in there, and you can see that the tempering is provided by the heat, and it does this. The hardboards that are not tempered won't do this, and that's the ones you really want to get, but they're a little bit more money than these inexpensive versions. So with these, now they could be applied to a solid support. If you're someone perhaps who likes this smooth surface, or you might like this textured surface, okay, and that could be applied to a strainer. I'm sorry, to the cradling effect that's done here. Okay, and that can come in all different sizes and so on. But with this one, you have to be ultra careful of the treatment, surface treatment. I would recommend matte medium first as your barrier, matte medium on the back, two coats of gesso, acrylic gesso on these to really give you the way to eliminate support-induced discoloration, which comes from the substrate. The substrate which you paint on is the major factor on longevity of paintings. People think it's the paint, but it's not the paint. It's the surface on which it's painted, because through support-induced discoloration, migration of acids or too much alkaline into the substrate, into your painting, that will change the colors on your painting, especially things like ultramarine, very sensitive to acid, can turn gray very quickly. In a few weeks, you got blue, it's gray. So that's because the acid is reacted with the ultramarine pigment. So this surface treatment, the foundation that you build, upon which you put all your paint and so on, is really critical to getting a good solid surface. Now, you don't want a telephone call from a customer or a gallery saying that you are using inferior materials. This is the least cost of the whole project, the solid supports and your strainers and your stretchers, the least amount of cost. Your time is the greatest cost of all this. The materials aren't. Even if you use acrylic paint or oil paint, it's expensive. Your time is the most expensive part. And you don't want to worry about having supports, whether they're stretchers or strainers, that fall apart after you put in so many hours, and your reputation is really on the line. I've covered some basic things as a working artist through all this time, but spend some time out there looking at the wood products that they have. Take some time and look at what they, and ask the species that they're using. The locally made, let me just say this, locally made stretch canvases, whether in the United States or in Canada, are fairly well made. They're valid. The only difference is that on the back, of course, you have to be very careful on the back, what kind of species they're using. And take this with you, okay? And check corner to corner. Are these stretch canvases that you're buying, are they straight? Take this. I do, if I do buy them, but I don't use them because I make my own. Because in making my own, I have control over the squareness, the canvas, the gesso, and so on. And the canvas that's on locally made ones is quite thin. It isn't, it's probably thinner than my shirt, my cotton shirt here, which they apply the gesso either by spraying, they squeegee it, or sometimes they roll it. So they are valid surfaces to paint with, and look at them. Look at them. Now, one of the other things I forgot to mention. When you buy these stretch canvases, hold them up, and what they call pinholes, or what is known as a strike through. You hold it up and you see a pinhole coming through. You see a light coming through here. Unless you like that your paint striking through from the front to the back, and you usually want to paint on the back of all the paint that's coming through, don't buy those. In this case, when I do my own, I know when I look at them, there's no light coming through. It's solid, I can see, and I can see that how the uniformity of the surface, how I gessoed it, it's uniform throughout. I just, you got to be careful about how you apply the gesso and so on. Bye for now. Thank you again. I'm going to return to gesso, not gesso, I'm sorry. Yeah, I could talk about gesso. I will. Acrylics and oils, helpful hints on those products and what to look for in those products. Bye for now.